If you like being able to watch the podcast, make sure to let me know by subscribing to this channel. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, or even since the beginning, then you know that I usually alternate a solo episode and an interview, and I kind of do that back and forth. But it wasn't always that way. I started off doing only solo episodes. Then when I started doing interviews, that's when things kind of got the ball rolling. I started meeting new people and networking, and then I had an abundance of interviews to do. Well, that's kind of beside the point. The point that I want to make is if you listen to some of the earlier interviews, I usually start by saying, "Hey guys," and then I introduce the person that I'm interviewing. Well, something happened that made me realize that I should probably stop saying, "Hey guys," before I introduce people. And then when I had that thought, I automatically went to the other end and thought, well, no, I shouldn't, because now I am giving in to cancel culture. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about cancel culture and the role that it plays and the role that it has played for me and how I am working my way through certain things that come up for me when I identify them as falling into the category of cancel culture. The biggest one is that of gender identity. So today, that's what this episode is all about. Cancel culture and gender identity. Everything is working out for me. It's working out for you, too. It just takes believing that it is. We can have, be, and do anything. The key is to care about how you feel and choose to feel good right now. Saying "hey guys" is something that kind of comes naturally to me. It's a part of the way that I talk. And I even say it when I'm just having a conversation with my girlfriends. There's 4 of us in our group. And when we're messaging back and forth or when we're talking in person, I might refer to them as guys. And I kind of realized I did that a little bit when I would go to type it or text it. And I thought, is this weird? Is this weird that I'm saying guys when I'm talking to other women? But since it's just a common phrase, I kind of let it go and fall to the wayside, and I didn't think too much about it until something specific that happened that made me look at it a little bit deeper. So, my husband and I were working our way through Survivor. We were watching as many seasons as we could that were on Hulu, and we noticed that this element of social norms and political views was being interwoven into the show. Whereas before it was kind of more general, it was just about the activities they were engaging in and camp life and just basically trying to win the money. All of a sudden, tribal council became this discussion of how when they're there living in this tribe, they are actually representing the larger society in the real world because of the elements of social norms which are brought in and then played out within the game. So these things were coming up regularly. And it was becoming a part of the show that these discussions were happening. And I actually don't remember exactly which season it was when this happened, but it had to be after season 40. It's one of the newest seasons. But what happened was we started to notice that more of the contestants coming to play Survivor were involved in minority groups. They were gay individuals, they were transgender individuals, more women. There was a lot more diversity in the tribes that were being portrayed in the show. And I'm sure that was a deliberate attempt from the producers to show support for minority groups and to make the show more relevant to the issues that are going on in our world. Because it really became this point of focus for analyzing our society. So we could look to Survivor for some discussions around that. So as more minority groups came in, Jeff, who is the host of Survivor, posed a question. Because when it's challenge day and the contestants are going to conduct their activity, some kind of physical activity or challenge in order to win, they are kind of off screen until Jeff says, "Come on in, guys." And then they come in. So Jeff posed this question and he said, "Hey, I just want to ask you, those of you that are here right now, do you think I should continue to say, 'Come on in, guys,' when I'm calling you into the challenge?" He said, "I don't mind changing it. I can change it if you think it's something that should be changed. I've been saying it for a long time. I like saying it." He didn't really give his opinion one way or the other on how he felt about saying it, but he wanted to let them know that he cared enough to make the change if it was offensive. And at first, everyone said, "No, we're fine with it. Go ahead, continue on your way, including the word guys in your phrase." And then one of the contestants went back to camp and thought about it overnight, and then came back to the challenge the next time, or wherever he was. It might have been tribal, I don't remember, and confronted Jeff and said, "Hey, I thought about this, and I think it's wrong that you use the word guys." Right there on the spot, Jeff said, "All right, that's it. I'm not going to say it anymore." And from then on, it was only, "Come on in," with no guys at the end. And when I was watching it, my first thought was, well, this is a great example of cancel culture. My second thought was, I do that on the podcast. My third thought was, I should probably change that. My fourth thought was, no, I shouldn't change that because I know my intentions are good. And I don't want to give in to cancel culture just for the sake of feeling pressured to change something. So I sat with this and I analyzed it quite a bit. I really wanted to get an understanding for myself on why I felt the way I felt, why I said it to begin with, and whether I wanted to change it. So, what's the issue? Why is it that some people feel like that is disrespectful? Well, it's because a guy is a male by definition. Even though we have a tendency to lump everybody, men and women who are in a group, under the heading of guys when you're using it to address the group. When you're saying, "Okay, guys, this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah." Or, "Come here, guys." Or, "Oh my gosh, hey, guys." Whatever it might be. It's one of those things that we just say, and we're not really thinking about why we say it or whether it's something that we're really behind saying. Unless you think about it going the other way around. Now, what if I came into a restaurant and I was like, "Hey, ladies," to everybody, all the men and the women included, and I put them under that umbrella term of ladies, much like we do with that umbrella term of guys. Would anybody be offended? And I think, yes. I think many men would take offense to that. it would be like you are putting them down by calling them a lady. So once I had that realization, I understood why it's a problem. Though not intentionally sexist, it is sexist. And I obviously, as a woman, am not trying to be sexist when I refer to you, my audience, and I say, hey guys, this is who I'm talking to today. I'm not trying to be sexist. I know that most of you are probably women who listen to the podcast. But if I were to say, hey ladies, I would only be speaking to ladies. By saying, hey guys, I am under this impression that I'm including everybody. But things are changing, and that is not as socially acceptable as it once was. And to be honest with you, once I came to this realization that I'm engaging in something that is sexist, when I didn't even realize that's what I was doing, it bothered me because I thought, well, hold on a minute. What am I upholding here? If I continue to use this phrase because I know that when I say it, my intentions are pure, I'm not trying to isolate anybody. I'm actually trying to go for inclusiveness. I'm trying to be genuine and friendly and really feel connected to my audience because it's something that you would say to your friends. But really, am I achieving that? Is that what I'm achieving by using that word? And I think in our society now, the answer is no, because some people do find that offensive. Because we are highly focused on gender identity in our society these days. So then I realized that the reason I've been saying it is because of my social grooming. I have been groomed throughout my life to take on certain aspects of the patriarchy, which I find to be normal because it's what I've known and it's what I've practiced. So, for instance, even now with my spiritual beliefs in source energy, when I refer to God, so I know that God and source energy are both the same thing, but when I use the phrase God, I am acknowledging to myself that God is a he. And I, of course, know that's not true. I know that God and source energy is not gender related at all. There is no gender. But because that's how I came to know God at a younger age and refer to God, I mean, when you read the Bible, it's all he. It's he. Even beyond that, when reading stories in school, if there was a character or just referring to an animal or a bug or just in daily life when you're interacting with some kind of being where you don't know what the gender is, what gender do you default to? I default to he because that's what I have known. And I remember when that started to change several years ago. And it happened with babies. It started with babies, I feel like. I don't really remember what it was, but it was something that I had come in contact with because I had a baby. And I was learning about something related to raising babies. And in the writing, the baby was referred to as a she. And this was a gender neutral baby story. So there was no picture, it was just a general baby, and they referred to it as a she. And I remember the moment I read it, I thought, that was really weird. Why did they refer to it as a she? It should have been a he. because when we don't know the gender of something, we default to he. And that was the first time that I realized that our society had a movement to change that, because it's not fair or accurate, it's sexist. Why would we always default to he? It doesn't make sense. Half the population is she. And now, of course, there's a large portion of the population that is neither and prefers to identify as they and them. So I realized it when I read it. I thought, wow, that's the first time I've ever seen she in the place of he. So then I started to change it myself because I thought, you know, it's kind of nice to balance that out a little bit. Let's throw some she's in there. And it was something that took quite a bit of time for me to actually promote a change with, because it was such an automatic response for me to default to he. So when raising my kids, if I was engaged with them and there was a bug, let's say, or we had seen a bird or an animal or something, and we're talking about it, I would still default to calling it a he. But every time it happened, I would notice it. I became aware of it because I had this realization of the change that was happening. I realized our culture was morphing, and it settled within me. Not enough to make an instant change, but enough to get me thinking about it when it was present in my experience. So then I started to change it. Right now we have a spider friend out on the playset who is huge. This spider, I wish I could just take a picture and send it to you. We actually caught it in a jar the other day just to get a better look at it. And the body on it is huge. And before even thinking about the possibility of this spider being pregnant with little baby spiders, I referred to it as a she. And I had named it a girl name. And I felt good about that because I realized that I'm starting to balance it out more. And I'm starting to inquire more. If you have a dog, you probably have had this experience where you're out and about with your dog and you come in contact with somebody socially who then refers to your dog as the incorrect gender. Have you ever had that happen? I had that happen all the time. And I always felt like I needed to correct the person, but not directly. I would wait for conversation to flow where I could just throw in the correct gender term so that they knew what gender my dog was. And it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But it was one of those things where I felt like, well, why wouldn't you just ask? And that's what I do now. When I want to talk about somebody's animal, I'll say, oh, is it a he or a her? Or I'll say, is your dog male or female? Just to get an understanding of how to refer to the animal. To me, it feels like a respectful thing to do. All right, so going back to me changing this phrase. When I was considering the change, the reason that I at first thought I should change this was because I was seeing it in the show. I was seeing it in Survivor. And I know that one element of Survivor is to focus on our society and the cultural aspects of what we're living. So I felt some pressure at that point. And that's why I felt like I should change it. But if you know how I feel about shoulds, that's why I then turned around and defaulted back to no, I shouldn't. Because when you feel like you should do something, it's because there's some kind of external force putting pressure on you to change. And it's not something that's innate. It's not coming from within you. So then I felt like, well, I shouldn't change that because I know my intentions are good and that should be enough. Because I really want to be my authentic self. And me being my authentic self does not have to include caring about what other people think. In fact, I encourage myself and everybody else to not care what anybody else thinks. I understand that's easier said than done. I also understand that that can be viewed as a negative thing. I've been getting to that point where it's not that I don't care necessarily, it's just that other people's opinion of me are not as offensive. I'm not as sensitive to it. So then I started thinking, well, if I want to continue to say, hey guys, at the beginning of an interview episode, I would hope that the people who are listening know who I am, know that I'm an authentic person, and that I mean no harm. It's not my intention to do anything except connect. But then I thought, well, I can't really expect that of anybody because not everybody feels the way that I feel. And can I understand why this is being viewed as me being disrespectful? And yes, I can. I can see the sexism in it. So then I started thinking, is it really that big of a deal for me to change it? Am I giving in to cancel culture? Are people going to judge me for giving in to cancel culture? By saying, well, I didn't think you would stop doing something just because the culture is pressuring you to do so. But that's not why I changed it. But I did change it. And it was an easy change for me to make. I thought, am I giving up any part of who I am to make this change? And the answer is no. Part of who I am is caring about being respectful. And if it's a change that's easy for me to make, and it was, why is that not okay to do so? Why is that considered cancel culture? I don't think it is. I don't think it is when the change is being made because of an innate reason that you have. I feel like I had a little bit of an easier time adapting to the movement around gender identity than some people. Because of my spiritual understanding, I have this respect for differences. I respect that other people are going to be different than I am, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't need to have things be the same in order for me to connect with somebody. I respect our differences and I celebrate them because I like the variety. With that said, it was difficult for me, and it's something I still struggle with, to not label somebody with a gender when I'm speaking. And that part has been more difficult for me to be aware of and more difficult for me to change. I actually had a recent experience with my son where we were out in public and we were interacting with somebody in the store. And this individual I could see as being a woman, but presented in a way that communicated to me that this individual may have preferred to identify as a man. It really could have gone either way. And I defaulted to referring to this individual as she when talking to my son. And it wasn't a problem. There was no negative interaction. There was no negative consequences or anything. But because I have been growing in my awareness of this, I realized it in the moment. Actually, as soon as I said it, I wished I could have taken it back. And it's because I have an intention to not offend. I don't want to unnecessarily create resistance or friction with somebody that I'm interacting with who doesn't really know me. They don't know that I have good intentions. They might just be offended because I'm not putting in any effort in being respectful. And so when I said it, I'd wished I hadn't said it. And I probably should have cleared it up right there in the moment and been like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I probably should ask you, how would you like to be referred to as?" Just like I would with an animal. Well, is your dog a male or a female? I do it with animals, so why not with people? And I think people have an issue with this because they want to throw their hands in the air and say, forget it. I'm just going to continue to do things as I've been doing because it's easier. Because I see a man, so I'm going to refer to that person as a he, and I see a woman, so I'm going to refer to that person as a she. And they don't care to make a change, which is fine. I'm not trying to encourage anybody to change anything they don't want to change. For me, I don't mind taking those steps to be respectful in that way because it's something that is easy for me to do in my mind now that I become more aware of it. And I still slip up. I'm not perfect by any means, but I care to offer the care. I care to present myself in a way that shows that it's important to me that I'm respecting you and what's important to you. Because that's me being my authentic self. So making a change like saying, "Hey guys," at the beginning of an episode is not me giving up my authenticity. It's me embracing it because I care to be that kind of individual. That is who I'm choosing to be. I'm choosing to be respectful. I'm choosing to care, to ask. And it's not a big deal to me to do that. That's something that is within my power. And therefore, I do it. I really think that this entire movement for gender identity has to do with sexism and the biases that come along with the divide between two genders. And by adding in other options, it changes the playing field. It allows you to stop sorting things into black and white, which how many things in life really are black and white? Very, very little. So why would gender be any different? It's only natural that as a human being, as a human species, some kind of change would be initiated in gender because it is our nature to evolve and change and to be diverse and to be variety. We don't like dry. We don't like this or that. It's too limiting. We are source energy beings. We are expansive creators. There's no limit to us. So why would we go and limit ourselves? It's not natural for us to do so. Now, I'm a part of the American culture, but this expands beyond that. I just spoke with somebody recently in an interview who informed me that in the Hispanic culture, they have started referring to individuals as Latinx, which encompasses everybody. Previously, we would say either Latino or Latina, based on whether the individual was a male or a female. But now, because of gender identity and the movement it has promoted change globally, this is widespread change throughout cultures. And the Hispanic culture is representing that by referring to the culture as a whole as Latinx. That means that you can't identify for somebody what their gender is. Only they can do that. And by saying Latinx, you're not saying Latino, which usually was the umbrella term, but now it's Latinx because Latino actually is masculine. It's part of that patriarchy grooming. And we as a people, as humans, are pulling away from that. And it's being represented on a widespread scale. So ultimately, when I realized that my default was supporting a sexist view, and it is. Why do I default to he? Because I was groomed to do so. and I haven't thought about why I do it. But now that I have, there really was no other option than to change it. Because once I realized what I was contributing to by continuing it, I had to decide if that's what I was behind. And to get behind it would mean supporting sexism, which I don't. So that is really why I made the change. It has nothing to do with cancel culture. It has to do with who I am identifying myself to be. Cancel culture is about control. It's about people wanting everyone to change something because of how they see something. And a lot of times that is how it's going. When somebody gets upset about something in our society and they make a stink about it, they promote other people adapting to the way that they see it. And that I don't agree with. I am not a fan of cancel culture. But if cancel culture brings something to your awareness and you realize that it's something that you are engaged in which you do not want to promote or which you don't agree with, then make the change for you. That's what I did. I made the change for me. This was about me realizing more about me. I recognized something within myself. I analyzed it. I realized that I had been behaving in a way that I disagree with for myself. No judgment to anybody else. We all are on our own paths, and we all discover things about ourselves in different ways and at different times. This was just an example of what happened for me. Once I realized what was happening for me, I came down to two options of either continue something or change it. And in this scenario, for me, the best option was to change it. If you're enjoying the podcast, you can show your support by leaving a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. You also can follow Dr. Williams' podcast on all social media platforms and subscribe on YouTube and by going to www.drwilliamspodcast.com. Deliberate creation is the key to living life satisfied, and that is my wish for all of you.